thanks for taking a moment with your partners to take a look at the syllables. Hopefully those made sense. This is a nice review, and now we're moving on to the review to talk about the main concept of the lesson. This is all about schwa. Say that for me. Schwa. So when we think about schwa, we think about that little upside down E. We talked about that just briefly with the vowel chart, but let's revisit exactly what schwa is. It's a Hebrew word. It originated from German, and it means empty or emptiness. Interesting, right? So when you think of that and what schwa does, it is representing two sounds, not necessarily predictable, although the is the most common. Most people just teach as the schwa sound. So it represents or I in some unaccented syllables. What two sounds? And you can see that over here on our vowel chart, right? Like we would mark that with an upside down E, but it's no different from the or the I that we see within our vowel chart right in here. So it can be spelled with lots of different letters. That's the problem. So it's hard to read, and it's also tricky to remember how to spell when we think about that. And again, it's really tricky. This is my favorite word as we see this. It's this word right here, or this little figure, or fruit, I should say. And what is this? Banana. Yeah, this is what I do with my banana, right? So this is before I eat it. So in the word banana, this is a really great word as an example word because there are a few schwas in there. So if I think of the word banana, schwa only occurs in an unaccented syllable. What type of syllable? Unaccented. So we have to first figure out where the accented syllable is within this word. That likely does not have schwa. Why do I care? Because that part of the word is very phonetic. I can go to the letter sound correspondences and it can be very clean, very crisp, very clear, very phonetic here. So say the word banana. Banana. Now, if my dog's name was Banana, and my dog was way out in the field and it was time to call Banana in order to come for lunch, right? I would say, banana. I would yell it out like that. When you call your pet to find out which syllable is accented, it tells me where schwa can't be. So when you call that pet, what happens is the accented syllable goes up. It is the loudest and it's the most phonetic. So imagine that you all have the same dog as I do, with the same name. Can you believe that? So let's call the pet. Ready? Banana. Which syllable seems to feel to go up louder and a bit longer for us? Banan. There you go. Yeah, yep, nan. So when I look at this word right in here, banana, I actually notice not only is that first syllable unaccented, but the third syllable is unaccented here. So in the very beginning, nan is the accented syllable. What are the sounds in nan? Tap that with me. Tricky because it's nasal, but you have it. And that N-A-N, that's a beautiful representation of nan, right? Nice job. What's the first syllable in banana? So how do you think you should spell that? No kidding, right? B-U. But we don't. What's the last syllable in banana? So how should we spell that? Just the U, that's right. So in this word, we have two unaccented syllables that both happen to have schwa. And we also happen to use an A in there for that banana right in here. So if I didn't have schwa, this word would be much more tense or difficult to say. Schwa is to kind of empty out that vowel sound to make it easier to fly out of my mouth. So if I never had schwa this morning, I would have had a banana for breakfast. Give it a try. Say it that way. Isn't that a lot of effort? Yeah, it feels funny. And if I had accented the first syllable, I would have had a banana. Try that. Banana. Right? And I'd have to have N-U, N-U. Yeah, no, right? Or if I accented the last syllable, what would that sound like? Banane. Well, banane. Yep, because I would sound it out like an open syllable long A. Banane, right? So what's tricky about these words is that we have to know the accented syllable. That's the true sound spelling correspondence. And then if it says or if it says I, it's kind of a crapshoot about how we're going to spell that, right? It's hard for spelling, hard for reading for sure. That's our new concept. And what do we call this? It is schwa. You've got it. Nice job. All right. So when we think about this word here, we introduced the word parallelogram from math. Remember when we were doing our warm-up with our ears? Say that word for me. Parallelogram. Yep, I have that up here so we can take a look at that as well. Well, let's see where the schwas are located here. So I have parallelogram. How did I know that? In parallelogram, we don't say parallelogram, right? That's, yeah, I just go by the sound of that vowel sound here. And I also try to figure out which syllable, of course, is accented, because that won't have a schwa. They can't happen in the unaccented syllables here. So how do we find those unaccented syllables? You know. Call your pet. There you go. So my dog's name now is no longer Banana. What is it? Parallelogram. You ready to call her? Ready? Parallelogram. And which syllable really felt like it went way up high? There you go. You're doing a nice job with that. Yeah. Parallelogram. Whoop. Yep, I got it. Parallelogram. So right in here, L, that's very phonetic. That part won't have schwa. But here's a schwa here, and here's a schwa there, because they're unaccented syllables, right? So it makes that part tricky. So here are the questions that we want our children to be able to ask, our students and ourselves, when we're trying to figure out what's going on with these multisyllable words right in here. Remember that we have or I, but we can spell it many ways in unaccented syllables. First question we ask ourselves is listed here, and then we have a number of other questions, and this is actually on a worksheet that you have in your handouts. So if you want to take a moment to find the schwa, yep, you've got it right here, identifying the schwa worksheet. This right here, which is in your handouts on page 2. If you have that in front of you, all I'm going to do is march you through the questions here. These questions guide us to figure out how to spell these words and what part of the word to really pay attention to. Okay, so we're working with the word alive, right? So say alive. Alive. Yep, let's call the pet. Ready? Alive. Oh, wait a minute. So what's the accented syllable? Live. Now I have the answers here. We just want to think it through. And do you see this also on your worksheet? Yeah, we ask ourselves, how many syllables? We might clap them. I want to show you something else too. 2 other ways to find syllables. I think that we mentioned a brief one a little bit later. Because every syllable has a spoken vowel sound that makes your mouth open a little more, you can do chin bumps. So let's try this, just as another way, in case your children prefer this, right? So the word alive, let's feel how often it bumps your chin when you say it. Ready? Alive. How many times did you feel that bump? 2. That means your mouth kind of opened up a bit. It's likely there's going to be 2 syllables, right? The other is, of course, we can clap it. So go ahead, let's clap them. Alive, right? So we know that they're 2 syllables. And when we call the pet, that helps us with the accent right in there. So those are different ways in which to play with finding syllables here. So if we know the accented syllable is live, what's the unaccented syllable? Yep, see how we wrote that right in that worksheet? Now wait a minute, what's the vowel sound? But what, how should it really be spelled? My kids would spell it that, my students would spell that way, right? Yeah. And you know what you say? Nice phonology. And you know, in this word we have schwa, so let's look at this, right? So you tell them what's right, and then you bring that forward a little bit more and tell them how to improve your spelling in this word here. How is it actually spelled? Look at that word. There's an A in there, not a U. And you might remember we had lots of pattern words like that when we did the phonemic awareness, didn't we? Right? Can you think of some of those that might start with A but sound like a? Around, about, above, right? Alive, all those words. So there's lots of words that have that A in the very beginning that sounds like that's a pattern. So you just tell kids this is what you expect in an unaccented syllable in the very beginning. So these questions ask these same questions up here as you walk through this schwa worksheet. What does it sound like? How is it actually spelled? The next to the last column, do you see that there? Where it says visualize the word. Sometimes this is a little less clear for people to understand. I want people to think about all the possum, right? Like the phonology, orthography, semantics, syntax, morphology. So in that column right there, think about the word alive. You're visualizing what it means, right? How it's spelled, how it has the A instead of the U, so on and so forth. right in there. And then put that into a sentence and write the sentence in that very last box, because meaning is everything, right? And we want to be sure kids know the meaning of those words and how to use them. All right, so that was just walking through the word alive. That's that first word on that Schwa worksheet in alive here. What I'd like you to do is to try to take a moment to work with some of the other words that you see here in that Schwa worksheet. Remember the people you just worked with your folders? Would you please take your worksheet and find those people really quickly? Just try a couple of words. See, ask yourself those questions, fill in that chart. Have a good time with it, okay?